Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports and big weekend for the South African team. Do or die in the EPCR Challenge Cup because we have got three of our teams in the round of 16. Lions, Bulls, Sharks, all vying for a place in the quarterfinals. Sharks looking to go back to back in the Challenge Cup, whilst the Bulls and Lions trying to keep the hopes alive of a first ever European title. And the Bulls received a lot of criticism for the fact that they did not prioritize the Champions Cup and go sort of full out to try and qualify. And what's quite interesting is this week Saracens coach have actually come out and said that they've decided to prioritize the league season, not the Champions Cup. And what will be interesting is the fallout of that, and whether people will take the same sort of exception for prioritizing the Premiership versus the Champions Cup. But the Bulls got the flag for. But the point is, what's done is done, and now it's about some really, really good sides in this Challenge Cup and just how far the South African sides can go. And it's going to be a big ask if they're going to even get past this weekend. So if we look at it, this is what we've got to look forward to. And yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic weekend of rugby. So it all starts tonight with Edinburgh versus the Lions. As a Lions fan, very nervous, to be perfectly honest. And it's not a competition I think we're really sort of going all in on. I do think that we're trying to see if we can just sneak into the URC playoffs, and that gets into the Champions Cup next season, because that's the big, draw card of the Challenge Cup, as it gets you into the Champions Cup, obviously, and it's silverware. But you look at the two teams being named. I mean, this is the Lions side. It's a good side. No Henk van Wyk, who continues to be made of glass and is injured once again, unfortunately. And but it's some interesting decisions. JC Pretorius, they've very much gone with an impact bench. The likes of Jason Pretorius on the bench, Marius Lowe on the bench, Nico Steyn on the bench as well, because Morne van den Berg has flown over for the match itself. So that's quite exciting to see him starting. I think he's a huge part of the Lions side. Reinhard Jonker, that inside center, that's going to be a big test. So, yeah, I mean, it's a Lions side that we know if they can click, they can get a result. I genuinely think they can beat Edinburgh, but it's a very strong Edinburgh side. Pierre Schoeman comes in, Dave Cherry starting. You've got Sam Skidegron or Gilchrist, full international, lock pairing, Jamie Richard, Hamish Watson, Magnus Bradbury. It's a proper loose trio. The backline features the likes of Darcy Graham, no Duan van der Merwe, who's still injured, but Wes Goosen, for example, he brings up 50. And yeah, so it's an Edinburgh side. It's a good pack, and I think the Lions obviously will have to try and match that at scrum time and physically, for example, try and dominate that. And I think if the Lions win tonight, there'll be big games for Frank Horn. I think Ruan Fent will have to play well. I think Asenati and Klabikanya will be pivotal at scrum time, and I think that Quan Horn, for example, it's your usual suspect. It's your big sort of Springbok players in inverted commas, and that's kind of what we need to see tonight. Is that the Lions Springboks, inverted commas, or players with the Springbok radars really standing up and coming good. And if they do, there's a result that can be taken. I just think that, with the challenges of traveling the likes of that, and you've got some fantastic sides in this side. I mean, Bath, for example, I think are probably obviously your sort of leading candidates really to win the Challenge Cup. So Edinburgh, I think, will also be another one that'll be fancying their chances. Racing have had a terrible season in the top 14, but they'll be thinking maybe this is a way of getting some silverware. So looking elsewhere at the weekend, you've got Paarl versus Bath tonight as well. Tomorrow you've got Avron Bayonet taking on the Bulls, and all the games are away from a South African perspective, and this is why I think it's going to be so difficult for them to get results. Montpellier versus Gloucester, USAP versus Racing, Connacht versus Cardiff, Leon versus Sharks, Ospreys versus Scarlets. So, I mean, if we look at the Bulls, for example, we haven't seen the team being named. I do expect it to be relatively strong. I do think that this could be something that the Bulls could potentially win. I do think they are favourites alongside the likes of Bath and Racing. So they'll back themselves, tomorrow. It's a 1:30 kickoff, so it's during the day. It'll be quite warm, I'd imagine, in comparison to playing, for example, Edinburgh tonight. The Bulls are under a bit of pressure, I think, to perform because they haven't really featured in the Champions Cup to the extent that I think that a lot of people would have hoped. They've featured far more than the other teams, but I think if we've been brutally honest, you look at the Sharks, you look at the Bulls, you look at the Stormers. The Bulls are far more settled, and I think that's where the expectation comes. That we kind of expect the Bulls to be a little bit more competitive, and I think they had everything they needed actually to get into the round of 16 of the Champions Cup, which they've done before, and potentially get into a quarterfinal, semi-final. We know right now we just do not have the player capacity to compete for the Champions Cup. It's the reality, and that's not going to change overnight. It's going to be a long process. But the Bulls, for example, today they announced the signing of Villiers Leroux, bringing in Andre Pollard, keeping big players. That is how they build a squad good enough to be able to compete on two separate fronts. And that's the big challenge that Jake White has spoken about. The idea of trying to compete on two different fronts. And they need to have a big squad. You have to have squad depth. That's why Toulouse can do it and Leinster can do it, because you look at a second string or third string Leinster side that came last week and took the Bulls right to the end and beat the Sharks. And that's the kind of squad depth that the African sides do not have. The Sharks, they take on Leon on Sunday, 6:30 kickoff over there. And I think, that, well, 7:30, I think. Actually, I'm not sure what the South African, I think it actually is 6:30 South African time, in fairness. That is going to be a huge game, because the Sharks are desperate for success. They're not finding it as easily as they wanted. This season so far, I think they've been very inconsistent. And so I don't think a lot of people have got the expectations. But they've won this competition, and that was a huge moment. What I think is frustrating is that they haven't kicked on from there. They won this competition. They got into the Champions Cup. And I think a lot of people sat there going, right, well, here we go. They've arrived. And they didn't get into the next round of the Champions Cup, so they dropped down back to the Challenge Cup. If they were to go back-to-back, it would be a huge boost for them. And I don't think they've got what it takes to win the URC, just from a consistency point of view. This could potentially be something they could focus on. And I'd be very interested to see the type of team they name, because that's at the end of the day, we're going to see how seriously these teams are taking it. The Lions taking it seriously. They've gone full strength. So, which is quite an interesting one, because I think that I personally would be quite tempted almost to have brought a few players home and gotten them ready for next week. Home game, got 4 home games in a row to try and get into those URC playoffs, and maybe that could have been the focus. But the Lions have gone full strength. They have shown the competition the respect that it deserves. Whether the Bulls and the Sharks go full strength, we'll wait and see. Even the other sides, we'll wait and see whether they go sort of full strength and the likes of that. But in terms of the prospects, I think 2 out of 3 will be a great weekend. I don't see how we get all 3 teams in the quarterfinals. It would be a massive statement, to have 3 South Africans, 3 out of 8 teams being South Africans, but unfortunately they're all down in the Challenge Cup. And then we've got the awkward situation with the Stormers, where they didn't even qualify for the Challenge Cup. So it's not been a good season in the EPCL competition, and that's why there's been a lot of criticism leveled towards South African sides in terms of their performance. Now, the Lions, you can't really sort of lump them in there, because they, in the Challenge Cup, they got themselves through the round of 16. That's kind of what was expected of them. It's more the Bulls, the Sharks, and the Stormers where they just haven't been able to compete in the Champions Cup and go on to the next round. In terms of my predictions, I think that the Lions probably don't get the job done. I think the Bulls should if they go full strength. I think the Sharks should as well, or could at least. So going down the list, I'm seeing I'm going Edinburgh likely, then Bath, Bulls, Gloucester and Montpellier could be an interesting one. I think it could be a flip of a coin, to be honest. I'm going to say Gloucester. I want to go with Connacht over Cardiff. I'm going to go with Racing, because I think from a cup point of view, I think they've got the players to get a job done. I think Ospreys at home will want to beat Scarlets after what happened last weekend. I think the Sharks can get the job done there as well. I do think that a lot of home advantage will play a big role. We saw that in the URC, for example. Your home teams win. And the Challenge Cup, I think, will be very similar. That's why I think the Lions, it's a huge ask for me, or for them to go to Edinburgh and beat Edinburgh in those conditions, and they've been on the road for a while as well. So maybe they've adapted those conditions. I suppose that is a potential silver lining, but I think the reality is those conditions are just really, really difficult to play in. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. I want to know what your predictions are and who you think is going to go into those quarterfinals, and we'll talk to you guys very, very soon. My name is Steve, and thanks for watching.